Welcome into a new Buff Stampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined again by football analyst William Gardner, and we are continuing with the Top Buffs Countdown. William, I got to say, as I was prepping for this show, I started to get pretty excited about the upcoming season. This is going to be fun counting down who we perceive to be the top 20 guys on the 2023 Colorado football roster.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more fun than previous years. I think the last couple of years, honestly, sometimes I had a hard time getting the top 20 of guys that I thought was, legitimately should be top 20.
Yeah, no doubt. So since our last show, I took a trip out to Las Vegas for Pac-12 Media Day. That was a good event, but obviously Coach Prime was not out there. Charles Kelly filled in for him, did admirably well in that role. It does start to feel like now with Media Day in the books that, gosh, we're getting pretty close to this season kicking off.
Yeah, and I think you start to see those things happening, and you see them like they were doing maxes in the weight room, and that's another sign that you're getting close to the start of things. And they're probably ratcheting up the intensity, or maybe they're kind of ratcheting it down a little bit. I don't know, but it's getting close. I was just saying, it's almost August.
Well, it's funny coming back from Las Vegas. I was expecting cool weather, and I come back to Colorado, and it's about as hot as it was out there in Vegas. So this has been unquestionably a bad weather year for Colorado. And I think it's funny that, Coach Prime and all the coaches he brought out with him to Colorado, those guys don't really understand that this is not usually Colorado weather. This is pretty abnormal for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the heat and the heat's not unusual for the summer, but I was saying the other day, can't believe people were whining about the rain just a couple months ago or a month ago.
Yeah. All right, well, enough with the weather talk. Let's jump back into the Top Buffs countdown. We are up to number 20, and this is where safety Cameron Silman-Craig comes in. Really that proverbial chip on the shoulder type of player. He was overlooked as a high school recruit. William, there were 387 prospects in Texas ranked higher in the 2021 class. So he goes to Jackson State and played 25 games as an underclassman, 111 tackles, and comes out to Boulder and earns his number with CU.
Yeah, and I guess he's overlooked by me too, since I was the only one that didn't have him ranked in the rankings. But then we talked a little bit about that in our last show about how many safeties there are, and everybody's going to have their preferences as to who belongs in the top 20 and who doesn't. I guess my thing with Silman-Craig is that he's not that big, and he comes from a lower level of football, and I don't know that he stood out necessarily to me in spring enough to rank as high as you guys did, but I guess I'd be curious. You and Brian both had him 10 and 9, so much higher than I did. And I guess I wonder what made you have him stand out more so than some of the other safety prospects.
Yeah, well, he was one of 10 players that are back this summer that did earn their number this spring. So it was a pretty small number of guys that actually earned their number this spring. The fact that he has history with Coach Prime and Coach Mathis and Coach Hart and some of those guys, sometimes when I'm kind of picking between guys on this countdown, I'm going to go with the guy that has some history with those guys. And just also what he brought to the mix as a vocal leader. Shiloh has become a leader in that safeties room as well, but it was really Cameron Silman-Craig that was the catalyst for that group during spring ball. Trevor Woods we'll talk more about him, but he's not as vocal a guy as Cameron Silman-Craig. So he brings a lot to the table. You're right. He's probably not that prototypical NFL size for safety. So you do worry maybe about his durability, but I think he's going to be on the field quite a bit for the Buffaloes.
Yeah, I think he'll play quite a bit. I think some of the others might end up being better suited for this level of football. It's hard to say. You mentioned the number thing from spring, which leads me to wonder how serious do you think that was in terms of seriously evaluating players, or was it just a gimmick or just a motivating tool?
I think it mattered, but it was up to each position coach in terms of how they wanted to kind of have criteria for picking guys that would earn a number. So there wasn't maybe consistency in terms of like linebackers. There was 3 guys that got a number, and other positions where there weren't as many. Quarterback, they didn't give out any numbers in the spring. So Yeah, I think it was fun though, because it was something, at least from a media standpoint, and for the fans out there to just kind of track. And I think during spring ball and in preseason camp, one of the things you want to find out is who's standing out among the team. And when you have guys that are earning their number during spring ball, that's a pretty clear indicator what the coaches think. So I liked it. Now you couldn't really do that going into camp because there's all kinds of media responsibilities and stuff that you have to record. Uh, B-roll stuff for football games this fall. So you've got to kind of award the numbers. But we've seen, the numbers that have been awarded here this week, that's kind of based off what they've done in the summer strength and conditioning program. So I think it has some merit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I see it. I see it a different way. I look at it. I think that the new coaching staff was trying to establish a new mindset, a new what's the word we always use?
Culture.
Culture here of hard work and working hard. And I always felt like that the number thing was about who worked hardest, not necessarily who, like people took it, oh, this guy got his number, he's going to be a starter. Where I took it to mean like, well, he's working as hard as he possibly can. Charlie Offerdahl, do we think he's going to be a starting running back? No, I don't. But I think that he showed the team the kind of work ethic and dedication that Coach Prime is looking for. So I think I looked at some of those guys and thought it doesn't necessarily mean that the coaches think they're a starter or a great player, but they have that work ethic and they're one of those guys that makes the team better with that and leadership, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, I know like a Louis Passarello, and there's an inside linebacker that got it who didn't stick around. So
yeah, Isaac Hurtado, that was clearly an example of what you're saying, a guy that it was more based off his work ethic than the fact that he's going to be an impact guy. Because he was, I think he's still at CU as a student though. So he's going to take advantage of that rule where you can still earn your degree. But I think most of the other positions, at least, as far as safety goes, I did think Cameron Silman-Craig earned his number from actual performance this spring.
Yeah.
But that,
I just think I just want to. I mean, I guess we'll see pretty quick in practice. He's going up against some pretty amazing receivers, and I guess that's one of the things that will develop as we go through this top 20. How many receivers are in it? So we'll find out whether he can compete against those guys before we ever get into a game. That's at least, I just worry about his size. It's just not very big.
Let's stick with safety talk here as we go to number 19, and this is where Shiloh Sanders comes in. He's the highest of 5 safeties on this year's countdown, or I guess if you want to include Jahquez Robinson as a safety, then he would be the second highest of 6 safeties. But I thought safety was the toughest position to rank guys, William. It's just hard to know exactly who's going to be starting in that group, but I think Shiloh is likely to be one of them.
Well, and they really upgraded that room. They brought in so many different guys, and I'm looking at the our position listing here, and there are just so many different guys that they brought into that room, and only a certain number of them can play. And I think Shiloh, I don't know, he's another one. I wonder if how much his name impacts what we think of him as a player, and I'm including myself in that. Maybe I'm giving him more credit than he deserves because of his last name, but he's got closer to that safety size, 6 foot 190, and certainly got the athleticism. And as I said to somebody else about Shedeur Sanders, I mean, the kid grew up being inoculated with defensive back philosophy and understanding, so he should know the game. He certainly got the athleticism. Again, hasn't proven it yet at this level, but was a much higher rated recruit coming out of high school. So I think I like him better than Cameron Silman-Craig for that position, but we're going to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I had Shiloh just slightly above Cameron Silman-Craig on there. He did play Power 5 football before, 13 games at South Carolina before he transferred to Jackson State. So you like the fact that he does have that Power 5 experience, and he was one of the top defensive players in the SWAC conference as a third-year sophomore, but last year just couldn't make a big impact because he was coming back from a torn ACL. He really beat most people's timetable to come back from a torn ACL. He suffered that in the spring, and was back playing games in the fall, not at that level that he was prior to the knee injury, but he's had plenty of time to work off the rust now. Wasn't able to go through spring practices at CU though. He was having to finish up his coursework at Jackson State. So, but you saw it, William, when Shiloh got into the program, he was immediately a leader. He was a guy that was, very vocal in a lot of the teamwork this summer. And did you happen to see the video that Shiloh did where he got his uniform and his new helmet for preseason camp?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There's a cool technology that they have now where they're going to be able to track each player in terms of where they're hitting. And so if they're, they're leading with their head, it's going to show up. And so it's going to teach these guys throughout camp to play a healthier brand of football, I would think. But it's kind of cool how technology's come along to try to make these guys safer out there.
Wow. Well, yeah, and that's interesting. I mean, the technological advancements there. I watched the videos and they wear those. I can't remember what the word is. There's a little vest that some of them wear, and I'm sure it's a GPS tracker for speed tracking and stuff like that.
Yeah. The catapult. Yeah.
Yeah. And the technologies that they have now to track every little thing is nuts, And
yeah.
so certainly closed head injuries is critical to the future of the sport, I think so. That's interesting to watch all that. But
yeah, I love the summer leaderboards because there's nothing that motivates guys more than having a firm number that they're trying to achieve and being able to compare themselves to yeah. all their teammates.
Well, and I think when you bring together that's one of the differences in this group of players than last year and the last coaching staff is that you notice that everything they do is competition. They're competitive yeah. with each other. You got to beat this guy. You got to beat that guy. You're doing tug of war. You're doing things where every single thing is a competitive thing. And each one, they brought in a bunch of guys who all want to be the alpha dog. They all want to be the one running in the front of the pack. And they're going to be one of them. So they have to fight for it. And that makes everybody work harder. And I think that's been missing in this program for some time. And I think Shiloh Sanders is certainly one of those. You mentioned his leadership, but certainly that comes from his dad, right? I mean, you didn't grow up in that family to be the beta dog. That's just not who that family is.
Yeah. It's funny. Shiloh Sanders is set to wear number 21 for the Buffaloes. In the hallway that leads out to Folsom Field, there's that showcase with the different uniforms, and yeah. the stormtrooper mannequin wears 21 and looks exactly like Shiloh Sanders. So he's had some fun with that. I think maybe in October, as we get close to Halloween, he can hide in there and scare some of his teammates.
Yeah, right. Hey, where did Travis J wind up in this ranking, or did he wind up in our?
Yeah, he already came in, and that's actually something that I was going to bring up as we get a little bit deeper into this countdown, because if I could redo where I had Travis J, I think I'd have him a little bit higher based on some of the stuff we've seen coming out this summer with him. I'm looking it up now. He was he was pretty low on the list. But
I was looking at that too, and I was looking at his size and what he did at Florida State, and I was like, wonder why we all had him so much lower than we did. I think he's a guy that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm pulling it up now. He was ranked 33rd. So yeah, I think if I could go back and redo it, I had him ranked 35th on my list. So I'm partly to blame for him to being that low. You had him at 22, William. So you were the highest on Travis J. We did this voting, about a month ago? So
right.
Before we've seen all the testing numbers from this summer. So it's going to be interesting to see, are they going to rotate those safeties quite a bit, or are injuries going to dictate how this plays out? It's impossible to know at this point, but man, that group is so loaded with talent.
Right. And I think, we're going to talk about I've never, again, going back to previous years, we've never gone back to other guys in the ranking before and talked about them again, but I think we're going to talk about these safeties over and over. And I think Travis J is one of those guys that's got that prototype NFL size and did some things at a big time, top level Power 5 school. So I think he, to some extent, we're just kind of guessing on these safeties. I think, is it fair to say that? I think that there's so many of them and they're all so good. I'm looking at Yeah, Trevor.
William Vito Tisdale could come in and be a starter. That's how up in the
Right,
air that position is. There's
right.
uh,
And,
Miles
and I,
Slusher. It's hard to say exactly. Is he going to play nickelback? Jahquez Robinson. Is he going to play safety or nickelback? So yeah, there's more questions there, but
right.
it's
And
not
I'm
questions that give you anxiety as a CU fan.
right,
They're questions that make you really excited.
right. Because I mean, Vito Tisdale, I'm not even sure if he made our top 40, but he's a guy any other year would have been our top safety. So it's very exciting to have all these guys in there. Miles Slusher, we talked about, I think, already, and Roderick Ward. And so they really did. They rebuilt the safety room in the way I was hoping they would rebuild the defensive tackles room.
Yeah.
So,
And their position coach, Charles Kelly, who was named the recruiter of the year last recruiting cycle. Now he did it at Alabama. We know that it's easier to recruit guys to Tuscaloosa these days, but it does show you that he is an elite recruiter. And so I
right.
think that safeties room is going to continue to be stocked as long as Charles Kelly is in Boulder.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But yeah, I mean, going back to Travis Jay, he played 16 games at Florida State and he's 33rd on our list.
Right.
That's
That's
that.
nuts.
Yeah. So
And he's 6'2", 205. I mean, he looks like an NFL safety too. So
yeah.
it just goes to show you what the rebuilding of this team has looked like.
Today's episode is brought to us by Macaulay Capital Fractional CFO Services. Is your business looking for financial guidance and support but not yet big enough to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hiring a fractional CFO who can work with your business on a part-time basis. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. And here's the best part. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with us. For more information or to set up a meeting, please visit MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. Sticking in the secondary at number 18 is cornerback Cormani McLean. Tough player to rank, William. I went with the optimistic side. I put him at 13th on my list. He's described as a new age cornerback. He's got the size, the length, the speed. The one thing he just has to get down is the conditioning at altitude.
Yeah, and I think we did this. So full disclosure here, I'm the guy that ranked him 30th, and I don't feel bad about it. And you guys had him at 13 and 16, respectively, which I think where most of the people on the board would probably have him. I frankly, the board would probably have him a little higher, and I don't think that's deserved either. But he's a freshman, man. I don't care how high he's ranked as a recruit. We don't know, and we've seen it here in Boulder, man. The superstar can't miss guy can't miss. And I think we did this ranking shortly after his first day on the field, when I think he puked 7 times. I think there was even an article about that the other day about how rough the workouts are. And I'm like, nah, not the rough workouts aren't that crazy. It was his first day at altitude. And I'm not knocking him for that at all, but I just have a hard time picturing a guy in 1 month, maybe 2, going from a guy puking 7 times on his first workout to a guy being one of the top players in a Pac-12 team. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. And again, we talk about this all the time. If we re-rank this at the end of the season, it's going to look a lot different. And maybe he'll be one of those guys that's clearly in the top 5. But I don't have any evidence of that. And the fact that he's ranked highly and highly recruited coming out of high school means something, but it doesn't mean as much as it does to other people, apparently.
Okay, that's fair. I like I let off here. I think I talked about safety being a tough position to rank guys. I think Cormani McLean, for some of the reasons you laid out, it's challenging. I don't know. He's got it, man. He's going to be lost at times. And yeah, we saw him throw up, and there's going to be an adjustment. Like you said, he's a true freshman, but man, he's got the skills. He's thin, but he's not afraid to play physical. He's got the length. His ball skills as a cornerback. I mean, I don't know if I've seen a cornerback recruit, maybe Travis Hunter, that has those type of ball skills. I mean, they finally started throwing away from him his senior year, but his sophomore and junior year of high school, he was just picking off passes left and right. And I don't know. I am going to again err on the side of optimism with Cormani McLean in his first year, but I can see the other side of it.
Yeah. And then, our next guy coming up, I ranked him where you ranked McLean. And because for exactly what I'm talking about, I guess we could,
Yeah,
maybe
we'll get to him, but I mean, we got to spend just another minute on McLean because
okay.
this is a big deal. I mean, he's the number one cornerback in the country. Travis Hunter was the number one ranked cornerback the prior year. If you have those two guys in William, just play along with me that Cormani McLean is going to be what I expect him to be. If you have both of those guys and they're able to play primarily press man, what does that do in terms of taking pressure off the other players on CU's defense?
Well, anybody remember 2016? I mean, there
Yeah.
it is right there,
Yep.
right? Two first round draft picks or top round draft picks at those positions. And it
And that's the
changes.
last
Well,
time
first of all,
CU had a double digit sack total guy in Jimmy Gilbert.
right. Right, because you slow them down. The difference between 10 pressures and 10 sacks is a eighth of a second sometimes. And if you hold up that guy, if you cover that guy just close enough to make that quarterback hesitate for half a second, it's a sack. And so it just changes everything, but also changes your play calling as a defensive coordinator and what you do going in. And I don't know, just to sort of segue off that, aren't we having a secret of or a top one of the top cornerbacks for this year's class coming back to Boulder again on his own? So maybe we will do it again.
Yeah, we'll see. The Charles Lester's going to be announcing here, so some folks might be listening after he's already made that announcement between Colorado and Florida State. But yeah, I know cornerback recruiting is going pretty well in terms of what we've seen take place since Coach Prime got hired, and that was expected.
And safeties, we just said that too.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Pretty exciting times in the defensive backfield. And now we want to see it applied to the big boys.
And sticking with that, you kind of tease this at number 17 is Jahquez Robinson. You mentioned it already. You had him highest on your list at 14. I had him at 21, Brian at 22. So pretty consistently high across the board. This is a supremely confident, versatile defensive back, 6'2", 205 pounds. Played primarily as a cornerback at Alabama, but he's actually listed as a safety on Colorado's summer roster. So I don't know. Do you see him being the top candidate maybe as a nickelback?
Maybe something like that. I think he's got so many, he brings so many different options to the table. He's got that NFL size and ability, and he played on the field for the best program in the country. So to me, he's proven it where our Cormani McLean hasn't. So,
yeah, sure.
It's just one of those situations where, hey, maybe 10 years from now, we're watching both of these guys in the NFL, and that'd be fantastic for CU. But right now, one of them has proven something and the other one has not. So I think McLean, Robinson is certainly somebody that Kelly knows something about and should have a good idea how best to fit him into. Kelly comes to Boulder and clearly, even with what we talked about in the safety room, does not have the talent in the secondary here that he had in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's going to use Robinson in different ways here than he would have down there. So it will be interesting to see what he does with him. But I think also, again, having all these various different guys in there gives him. We talked about this with some of the other guys up on the front of the defense. Gives him options and flexibility to do different things on defense.
Yeah, we were actually talking to Charles Kelly about Demouy Kennedy and Jahquez Robinson because he has that history with those guys from Alabama. And he said exactly kind of what you alluded to there, William, is that they just had studs in front of them. It had nothing to do with it. And Demouy Kennedy was actually starting to play a lot right when he got hurt. So he said it was a no-brainer when he moved to Colorado to recruit both those guys. So you look at Robinson. I mean, he was a blue chip recruit coming out of high school and yeah, spent 3 years at Alabama. So you like the pedigree that he has there. Part of a really big crop of Florida natives that have invaded Boulder, Colorado this summer.
Well, it's like we talked about with Savell Smalls at the edge position. People write him off because he didn't play at Washington. Come on, man, get out of here with that crap. It's not like he didn't play here. he didn't play, but because he was playing behind 2 NFL draft picks at Washington. So same thing with Robinson. He goes down to Tuscaloosa, and he's behind some 5-star NFL draft pick kind of guys himself there. You get him up here, and let's see what they do now that they're the front guy, and see if they live up to that sort of standing.
Let's move a little closer to the line of scrimmage here, William. At 16 is edge Derek McClendon, the second highest ranked edge player on this year's countdown, and has played a lot of football at Florida State, 38 games, 7 sacks. And some of these Power 5 transfers that are come into Colorado's program were kind of on the cusp of being a starter or reserve at their previous spot. McClendon was a straight up starter at Florida State last year, started 12 games.
And it's curious, he has probably maybe the widest spread of votes in our thing, because you had him at 7, I had him at 16, and Brian had him at 33. So he kind of all over the board with the 3 of us. But
yeah,
I think he's certainly, he's another one who has proven it in a top conference at a top school. And I think where he is be one of those top edge players that we're looking at. He can rush the passer. He can drop out into the flats. He can drop into pass coverage and play the run. And so I think Derek McClendon is certainly somebody on the edge that's been better than anything we've had on the edge at CU in a few years. So I'm really looking forward to what he does. I think he's exciting for a variety of reasons. And I don't think people think of him as a pass rusher, but maybe they should. So I'm very excited about him out there.
He's a character too. He's one of those guys that is always showing up in the behind the scenes videos and flashing his smile. And he did well this summer getting acclimated. He got a single digit number. He's going to be wearing number 9 for CU this fall. We'll get into the highest ranked edge on our group here in a bit, but the fact that McClendon isn't the top ranked edge on this countdown again goes to show you how much better the talent is at CU right now.
Yeah, and he, he's 6'4", 260 with twitch. I mean, he can really move and got that first step. He's got that kind of size, athleticism combination that we haven't seen, maybe in 15 years. Jimmy Gilbert didn't have the size, but he had the athleticism. This guy's got both of those.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's move to the other side of the ball here, William. And you've got a little run of offensive linemen, so I know you're going to be excited about this. 15 is offensive tackle Savion Washington, 6'8", 320. William, I've mentioned this before. My first impression during the open practice in spring ball was walking in to the indoor practice facility, and right there was Savion Washington, and it was like, wow. That is a massive human being.
And that reminds me of way back in the dawn of time, prehistory, when I was still playing and working for CU football. And back then they used to have in the spring the varsity alumni game, and they'd bring all those, back then there were so many NFL alums, they'd bring them all back. And I came walking around a corner, and I walked into a wall that turned out to be Stan Brock, who at the time was an all-pro offensive tackle for the Saints, and he was 6'7", 310, and it was just the big. I just sort of stopped. I think I probably looked at him like I was an idiot, and I was like, he was the most ginormous human being I had ever seen in my whole doggone life, and he just made all of our current offensive linemen at the time look like kids. So I know what you mean when you walk and you see that kind of a guy. He's just a physical specimen, and it's nuts, But I think I teased on our last show that I was going to have a bone to pick with you about your ranking of the offensive tackles. So let's have at it, because I think you're off the meds here on your rankings of these 2 offensive tackles.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for calling me out.
And I think
I like Savion Washington.
He's another one that's interesting in the rankings. That you had him 27th, I had him at 20, and then Brian had him at 8. So we're kind of
well. There was a point during spring ball when Jake Wiley was running with the first team at right tackle, so that went a little bit into my ranking here. I do have high hopes for Savion Washington. I just don't think he's to that top tier in terms of talent on this football team, and I could be proven wrong. I mean, you look at it. He had a substantially better grade from Pro Football Focus last year at Kent State than any of CU's offensive linemen did last year. I don't know how much stock you put into that. I mean, those PFF rankings are really tough, especially with the O linemen, because you don't know what their responsibility is on the play.
Right.
But I think if I was going to counter my own stance in terms of ranking him at 27th, it would be that he does have familiarity with Sean Lewis's system and Bill O'Boyle's coaching, and that's going to help. I think. I'm not quite sure that Savion Washington is like an all-conference type candidate at this point.
Well, I look at him and I think, I've never been a big believer in the Pro Football Focus rankings, because I don't believe that they do the film work, because it used to take me a couple of days, hours and hours of days, to grade one game of each guy that I had, 5, 6, 7 guys. I have a hard time believing they have enough people that know what they're doing to look at all those things. But watching what I've seen of Savion Washington playing for Kent State, and seeing what I've seen of him here, he's just a massive human being who moves really well at 6'8", and got ridiculously long arms, and he moves well laterally in both directions. And I think the fact that he knows this offense inside and out is going to make a huge difference. I just think that he's a next level candidate type of player. I think he's going to show it against this level of outside linebacker and defensive ends, that he can handle those guys. The question mark for him is going to be the athleticism. Can he handle the outside speed rush? And I think he'll be able to do it. I think he's got the technique, and I think he's got the long arms that maybe make up for not quite maybe having the quickness that Lichtenhand has. But I do think he's going to be one of the top tackles in this conference.
You mentioned the alumni game from back in the day. Was that done like in place of the spring game? When did y'all have the alumni game?
Well, that was the spring game, and then I think they stopped doing it. I mean, they were doing it up, I think, through the second or third year of McCartney's time here, and then
okay.
I think there was liability issues, and then
it's probably can't be safe for a bunch of guys that haven't gone through a strength and conditioning program to go out there.
And the guys in the NFL couldn't play, obviously, and then some of the other guys are, you'd go from like one year the Cohn brothers, who had just played the year before, were playing, and they were a couple of cards. They were funny, but then you'd have some guys like, you clearly do not need to be on a football field right now. But it was fun, and then
did the alumni ever like challenge or win the game?
I think one of those years, early on, it took Coach Mack a while to turn things around. I think early on they were actually in it a little bit, and then one year he did it, and then he had an actual player inter squad scrimmage thing a week after or a week before or something like that. So it was kind of went both ways, but it was fun because a lot of those. So I remember being on the sidelines, and all those NFL guys would be standing behind us on the sidelines, and I remember being split up into teams, and I can remember some of those NFL guys looking out there and going, man, none of these guys would play for us. I'm like, standing right here, man, can hear you, standing right here.
We're staying off topic here, but
yeah,
I would love it if the NCAA or whoever is the governing body for college football in the future allows an actual game to take place in the spring. How cool would it be, like, if you could play your in-state rival in April? Talk about television revenue that could create.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think thinking back to what that memory that I had is that a lot of people on the board, they don't realize that we finished third in the country in the 70s one year. We were a really good program, and so it wasn't just the McCartney era that CU football was really good. So at that time in early and mid 80s, we had a lot of alums playing in the NFL and such like that. So and it would be a lot of fun. But I'm not sure the coaches would enjoy it so much.
I guess it would be tough too in terms of like depth. Sometimes you have depth issues in the spring because you haven't got your freshmen on campus yet.
Right. And I think you got to get game plan for a CSU or whatever, and you sort of see the animosity between the two programs when they play in the regular season. So I think there's issues with it. And I don't think the coaches would go for it. Okay. They don't need that.
Coach Prime would. He's been on the record as far as saying that he wishes they were allowed to scrimmage other teams to kind of get a gauge for who they are. I liked that he admitted that sometimes you just don't know until you go up against another team. That and we've seen that, and we've we've been fooled by CU teams in the past that, certain positions look good because they're playing against just an awful unit. And until you get into the season, you just don't know.
Right. Right. He's a different breed of cat, though. And so he as you see from some of the other coaches' comments about him, he sees things in a whole different way. But I see your point. And, like going back to Savion Washington, it'd be interesting to see him go against some of these guys. But that being said, I don't know that, like, if we were playing a CSU, they don't have anybody on the edge that can challenge him.
Let's go back into the countdown here. William, at number 14 is offensive lineman Tyler Brown. We were really similar with our votes here. I had him at 16th. You had him at 15th. And Brian at 18th. Top 15 guy. It seems like this is deserved. He was a first-team FCS All-American last year.
Well, and I look at him and I think, I love what Coach O'Boyle had to say about him, that he's got caveman technique and caveman strength. Yeah. And you see, he's clearly the hardest working guy in every one of those videos we've seen, and that's saying something, because there ain't anybody dogging in those videos, and he's sweat soaked and working his tail off, and got to go to that offensive line camp this summer, and to me, he's Andre Giroud, man, just without the refinement. Andre Giroud being a 10-year NFL All-Pro and unanimous All-American, I think. But I think he's got that same size and ability. He just has to refine his technique, and I think he'll do that under Bill O'Boyle. I think he's going to be real special. I'll say it right here. Tyler Brown's getting drafted if he doesn't get injured. I'm not going to say how high, but he's one of those guys that'll be a difference maker at the next level for 10 years, because he's just got everything you need. And we talked about a little bit in our last podcast, I know, the difficulty in evaluating whether a guy has the heart and the work ethic. Well, you don't got to evaluate anything with this guy, because he's got it.
Yeah.
And, when Coach O'Boyle tells him, well, your technique is not there, he's going to do the work to get it there. And I think we're going to see him do very special things. And the other thing that really jumped out to me in spring was he and Lichtenhand, they really got chemistry together on that left side. And you saw it was no accident that a lot of big plays came through that guard tackle gap in those spring scrimmages, because those two guys are playing very well together. So I'm very excited about Tyler Brown. I believe he'll be one of the best offensive linemen in this conference.
When you talk about him being a draft pick, are you saying in a couple years, or do you think he's so good that he's only going to play 1 year in Boulder before moving on? Because he does have 2 years of eligibility.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. If a guy plays well enough and the NFL says, hey, we'll take you in the top 2 rounds, you probably got to go, right? So we'll see what he does this season. I guess I was kind of thinking he'd be here a couple years.
Yeah, probably.
To refine that technique and really learn the game.
But this is why the transfer portal and one-time transfer exemption is great. Tyler Brown, you look at him kind of under the radar, goes to Louisiana, transfers to Jackson State. And finally, because of that work ethic that you so eloquently described, has gotten himself to be an FCS All-American. It's great that he gets to now transfer without penalty. That's why that rule was made. There's, a lot of guys that, are transferring a bunch of times and it just looks bad for the sport. But Tyler Brown, you got to be really excited for him to have this opportunity.
And not just the work ethic, but he's just a massive human being. And he's just like, I love that one picture where, they got the one-on-one tug of war with the harness and he's down there and somebody's at ground level and you see this. I mean, he's got shoulders that are as big as mountains, and he's just this ginormous human being. Clearly, he had no problem being down low at that level, and he's just an exciting prospect to me. He's got the length in his arms to go along with the size, and I just really think that he's going to steamroll some people this year.
Yeah, 6'3", 310, like you said, that's what an offensive guard's supposed to look like.
Right,
is Tyler Brown.
Right,
that's the prototype.
That's like you talk about, like you look at that picture and you look at, he's the guy getting off the bus you want. And I said, it's like, now Andre Giroud was a different kind of guy. He looked like those Alabama offensive linemen where he was 6'5", just kind of enveloped you like a cloud, like 6'5", 330. But I think and Tyler Brown is a more, and they're going to sound funny, slim. he's as slim a 310 as I've ever seen, because if there's body fat on that kid, I don't see it.
Yeah. Sticking with the O-line, up to 13 is center Van Wells. This is the third offensive lineman in a row here.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're going to enjoy this. So Van Wells' nickname is Bam. So we just talked about Tyler Brown. He's the Rock. Jared Christian Lichtenham, we'll get to him. He's Tank. You get some fun short nicknames on that O-line: Rock, Tank, and Bam.
Rock, Tank, Bam. Yeah, it's like, well, you got to use small. I was going to say we're going to use small words for offensive linemen, but frankly, offensive linemen are usually the smartest guys on the team. You got to use small words for the defensive linemen. This is what I always say. Like, huh? What? And I'll tell you a little story. When I was coaching defensive line one year, and I had a kid who'd been a starter for me for a full season. We were going into the start of the second season. He was my starting defensive tackle, and I'm diagramming up on the board. I said, "Any questions?" And he raised his hands, and he says, "Coach, what?" And I'm going to take it for granted people know what I mean when I say diagram, and you X's and O's and arrows. And he says, What do those arrows mean?" And there was a moment of silence, and then all the other defensive linemen just busted out laughing. It's like, oh my God, I love this kid, but he's the dumbest guy I've ever met. Oh my God.
Whatever you were getting paid for that coaching gig, it wasn't enough, it sounds like.
I said, Tim, how the heck did you know what to do without understanding what I was putting up on the board? He said, "Well, no, you show me on the field, coach." I was like, okay, all right, okay, everybody, here's what it means. But anyway, I digress. Van Wells is kind of the opposite of what Tyler Brown is, that he's not the massive human being, but he's a technician, and he's athletic, and he's got length. And curiously enough, Van Wells is really kind of exactly what the NFL is doing with centers, where centers are not the massive guys that they put at the guards, but they're smaller and shorter, and they have tend to be much more athletic, and they get underneath those big 6'2", 320-pound defensive tackles and use their hands. But Van Wells, to me, really, and again, this may sound counterintuitive, looks like an NFL center. And I remember going to practices when Daniel, oh my goodness, Dan Munyer was the center at U, and thinking, man, he's so little. I mean, he's shorter than I am. And he's been playing in the NFL for 10 years at 6'2", 300, right? Because that's what they're looking for. And Van Wells, to me, is that guy. He's Dan Munyer all over again. I think he's more athletic than Dan. And so he also, to me, people talk about Beebe's going to take his job. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I look at Beebe in these videos, and that's a thick, massive human being, right? But Van Wells has proven it in 8 or 9 games last year against Pac-12 competition, Power 5 competition, that he is a very good center. I had him at 8, you had him at 20, and Brian had him at 14. But I think Van Wells is going to be one of the top centers in the conference this year.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't know who's going to start there between Lane and Beebe. You said that you expect Van Wells to hang on to that starting job, and it makes sense if that's your belief that you would have him at 8th on your list, because he is a really good player. I mean, this was I think a freshman All-American last year, right? I mean, I don't know how many true freshmen were playing center in college football, so maybe there weren't a lot of guys to choose from for that list. But he played pretty well in about 400 snaps as a true freshman, so you got to be excited about his future. But I just don't know if there's a lot separating him in Landon Beebe going into camp. Beebe's got more experience, even though it's not at the Power 5 level. He's a senior and has been around the college game longer. So I think that's a coin toss type position battle going into camp, and maybe one of the most intriguing position battles that's set to take place.
Yeah, and I think Beebe's got the experience, and he's certainly got that. People don't understand the difference it makes physically, the 3-year difference in age at that age. Okay, so Beebe's 3 years older than him, and for most, the average male, they really don't start hitting their physical peak and prime until 24, 25, 26, and the testosterone really starts to kick in. And so that 3 years is a massive difference. And he's got 3 years of experience playing the game. Plus, he's got that I have to do it this year or it ends sort of desperation. If he doesn't do it this year, he ain't playing at the next level. So there's an added edge there. But that being said, Van Wells is just a superior talent and has everything that you want, in an NFL center. He just lacks the experience. So this is going to be the, maybe it's Cormani McLean versus Jahquez Robinson, right? Where one guy's got the unquestionable top level talent, but the other guy's got the experience and the size and whatever. So again, we as fans win either way, right? Because let the best guy start. And I'm not, pushing Van Wells and saying I'd rather have him start. I'm just saying let the best man start. And it's my belief that Wells has the higher ceiling. Maybe BB's here right now, but 5 years from now, Wells is going to be up there.
Yeah.
And either way you look at it right now, it's a win for us.
Obviously, you want to get your best 5 offensive linemen out there. I think at this point, we're projecting Savion Washington, Jared Christian Lichtenhan, and Tyler Brown to be 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
Center, like we just talked about, that's up in the air. What in right guard could potentially be up in the air as well. You've got Jack Wilty and Jack Bailey. But what if Landon Beebe and Van Wells prove, that they're among the 5 best offensive linemen? Who would be more likely to move to guard? Would it be Beebe?
Well, I think Beebe, because he's got that thickness and the strength. But I got to tell you, short of injury, nobody that I see on this team is beating out Welty.
Okay.
I mean, he's massive and huge and got the talent. There's no, Bailey's significantly smaller and well, frankly, they're all smaller than Welty. He's a huge individual himself. So again, I think sometimes you saw pretty good chemistry amongst those 5 guys in the spring. And so sometimes your best 5 is not your best 5 talented guys. It's the guys that work best together. So Boyle's got to figure that out with these guys who makes the team run, who makes the line run best. Again, I always go back to that 2001, and that offensive line didn't work until Lucier started at center.
Yeah. Well, it's been a minute since we talked about an offensive skill guy, William, and at number 12, we get to do that. Running back Savion Wilkerson comes in. We all had him in the top 20. I had him at 11. You had him at 12, and Brian at 19. Another lightly recruited player out of high school. He's from Maryland initially, goes to Delaware State, plays in 15 games there, and then goes to Jackson State, where he was a first-team all-conference selection last year. Put up big numbers last year, 1,312 yards of offense, 10 touchdowns. What are your expectations for Savion Wilkerson?
Well, I love him. I'm super excited about him as a player, and I think he brings the combination of size and athleticism and got the ability to make people miss, the ability to run people over, and he's sort of the forgotten guy with Alton McCaskill and maybe to some extent, except some degree Smoke as well. I think Wilkerson's the kind of guy that's forgotten, and I think he's going to make people remember. Because I do think he has really kind of got some superior skills, and he's proven that at the college level. Again, not Power 5, but nevertheless, he's played for Coach Prime and Coach Flea. It's Coach Flea, right? Is running back.
Yeah.
Which kind of funny. We got Bam and Tank and Rock, and then we got Flea. But I'm super excited about Wilkerson, and I think he brings everything you need to the running back game. And really going to improve that running back room.
It was interesting. He didn't even announce his transfer to Colorado. He just showed up, got cleared, and started popping up on videos. And everybody's like, wait, is that Savion Wilkerson? It was, he definitely didn't play up his recruitment the way most guys like to,
right.
Create some drama and some, suspense leading up to their decision.
Right. And it was, I just love that, frankly, that he's got the confidence in himself to just show up and not have to be celebrated and all that kind of stuff. And I think he's just going to be a guy, if nothing else, he's going to push those other guys to be better, just to be able to get on the field ahead of him.
Yeah. He's listed at 5'9", 204. That's a pretty compact running back right there.
Yeah. That's a Volkswagen. you know, it as a line, like, like your linebackers these days, 6'2", 6'3", you better bend the knees and get low to tackle that guy, or he'll put a helmet right in your navel and knock you on your backside.
What is Alton McCaskill the fourth then? Is he a Mercedes?
Uh, well, maybe I'm trying to think like being not the car buff that I think I know what I'm thinking about, but I can't remember the brand name. But yeah, one of those. He's like one of those sleek black things. An Audi, maybe one of those high
Okay.
end Audis.
He's definitely a high end. We'll talk more about him here later in the countdown. At number 11 is linebacker Demouy Kennedy, another guy that we had similarly ranked. I had him at 15 and you and Brian at 13. He's it sounds like he's recovered from that torn ACL that he suffered last October. That was the big concern with him coming in, was just, was he going to be healthy? But he proved to be Colorado's fastest defensive player, like they expected him to be during summer testing.
Yeah, his numbers were kind of nuts in terms of his ability to run. At 6'3", 220 or so. Just kind of nuts. I mean, I guess it just goes to show you the kind of talent that's sitting on the bench at Alabama. That a guy that can run like this at his size was not being a starter, but he's going to kind of, who do you compare him to that CU's had recently, right? I mean, Kenneth Oleg-Bodie, except he couldn't run like that.
I would say Davion Taylor would be the closest comparison I would have for him, just from a speed standpoint.
But I think Kennedy's much more refined as a linebacker than Taylor was, who was very new to the game. So I think right off the bat, Kennedy's another guy that you put him with Bailey, and you got a thumper and a runner, at those two inside linebacker spots. And I think you probably use the one as more your Mike type guy, and Kennedy's more your run of the sidelines guy.
Yeah. His position coach Andre Hart said that he's going to be electric. These coaches are not trying to dial back the hype with Demouy Kennedy. When you talk to people off the record around the program, I mean, his name comes up about as much as anybody's does. And Charles Kelly was raving about him at Media Day last week. So I'm really excited to see him out there. And I don't know. Yeah, Davion Taylor had the speed, but he wasn't, like you kind of pointed out, he wasn't that natural sideline to sideline guy.
Right. He didn't understand the game, frankly. Not his fault. He just hadn't grown up with it that way. But I just smiling to myself thinking about, here's all these offensive coordinators in the Pac-12. They're in for a little bit of a shock, because they're used to, like, hey, let's quarterback, look for the tight end, and the Colorado linebacker will be 3 steps behind him. Not anymore, pal. Not anymore. So we're going to get some big plays and some interceptions in conference this year, because they don't understand that this is not your last few years of linebackers at CU. We got some guys that can flat out run.
All right. Well, we're going to break there and come back and have another Buff Stampede Radio breaking down the top 10. You're not going to want to miss that show, William. There's going to be a lot of excitement in our voice as we close out this countdown.
Yeah, but I think we're this top 10 is far and away the best top 10. I mean, I think you got to go back to probably the mid 90s or maybe 2001 to get a top 10 like we got that we're going to talk about here. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. All right. We'll be back with the final 10 guys on the Top Buffs Countdown. Thanks for tuning in to this show, as always.